official
man.
podcast, for real. They're a group of 4 friends that gather around and they live stream their podcasts on the internet.
Every now and then.
Every now and then.
All the time.
Yeah, every now and then they live stream them. Usually they just, I guess, talk and bring guests.
For the most part, they just and bring in guests. This time, our guest is Sean.
Hi.
Hi,
Hello,
Sean.
Sean. We love you, Sean.
That's live, thank you.
Sean, tell us your best joke.
Okay. My life.
Damn,
Thank you for having me.
damn,
Hot dog.
What
like
a
it a lot.
story, Mark.
Man, crazy.
That is crazy. You're a kooky cat, pal.
I mean, I
But
can,
yeah,
Almost as kooky as the official podcast,
Ooh, that callback.
which you
So-
can find at Twitch TV/the official channel.
also it can be found on youtube.com/penguin
Z0.
Z0, sorry. And he'll post it. And yeah.
What did you have? Let me ask you, good friend Ashton. What did you have for lunch today?
For lunch, I actually had breakfast from IHOP with my good friend Jake, who asked me this question just now.
So,
we had
what exactly did you have? Go on.
all right, so I had the 2 times 2 times 2, which was 2 eggs.
Did you just say times, like 3 times?
there's just too many numbers. I'm confused.
That's how it says on the menu. It's the 2
Two-
times 2 times 2.
But it's called the 2 by
Hey.
2
Hey,
by.
hey,
Yeah,
guys.
yeah, but
Hey, guys.
keep going. What was in the meal?
2 eggs, 2
Uh-huh.
pieces of bacon,
Yeah.
and then my 2 pieces of wheat toast,
Yes.
which were delicious. I asked for a side of butter, and then for some reason our waiter got very offended at me. I don't know actually what brought that up. Still to this
Now-
day, I
now-
wonder.
You must say that those ingredients at IHOP, they're good, but they're not as good as if you got them fresh. And you
Right.
can get them fresh at blueapron.com using the code official.
I didn't know
You
we
can
worked
get
for
fresh
Spurs.
ingredients delivered straight to your door. There's no fees, there's no hassle, no cancellation costs. It's all delivered straight to your door in a pinch. blueapron.com/official.
The beautiful thing about using Blue Apron is rather than having a team of cooks cook it in the back, you get to feel justified in yourself by cooking the meal yourself after the fresh ingredients have been delivered to you. And nothing feels better than eating a meal that you were able to cook all by yourself using your own ingredients.
You
I
will
get a pink
taste.
apron instead.
You will taste and serve the delicious greatness of Blue Apron at blueapron.com/official.
Order now.
Hey guys, you wanted a joke?
Huh?
Why does a tree do yoga?
Why does a tree do yoga?
So it can stay lumber.
Pretty good there.
Hey, guess what? Why do
What?
dogs get lost in the forest?
Why?
From barking up the wrong tree.
That's pretty good there, Sean.
Hey guys. How do you keep a poker game clean?
With a towel.
By having a royal flush.
Oh my god.
Hey guys. Why is Messy Marvin always sleepy?
You're quite the guest. All you do is go on.
Because he needs a napkin.
Oh my god, dude.
I feel like I feel like I'm like traveling through another dimension or something. I feel like I'm gonna start
Well, every
hyperventilating
time
soon.
when you travel, don't forget to bring a nice, suitable razor, which you can get at dollarshaveclub.com/official. No more of those cheap travel razors or that cheap shaving cream that you find on the shelf. You can get a reliable shave, a good, clean, reliable shave from dollarshaveclub.com/official. Dr. Carver's shave butter has given me the best shave of my life. I personally, and you can attest to this, I personally have never felt cleaner or more sharply cut. dollarshaveclub.com/official. Now, what was that you were saying?
I was saying that it's been 8 minutes and 40 seconds so far.
Yes.
So, and we really just haven't even touched the surface of the official
How
podcast.
about you touch the surface there, pal?
All right, then
Did
I'll
you
touch
ask if you
that
could touch
surface.
the surface?
I don't need to ask because I am one
You
with
get
the
consent,
surface.
I gave my consent right away.
I am the surface.
Okay.
Implied consent.
Okay.
Look it up.
Oh.
Consent
Oh.
/ the official podcast.
Consent.com.
Consent.com /
I don't want to go
official.
to consent.com. I don't want anything to do with consent.com.
I am actually a proud sponsor of consent.com.
I too am a
Founder.
I'm a founder of consent.com.
I support.
So what are our goals for this podcast?
All right. Well, we're gonna just talk about like what the official podcast is, what they do in relation to like their protocols in the podcast, I guess, area, the genre of podcast, how they get their podcast around, like giving it to their like Patreon supporters and just the general public. And we're going to talk about what they do with their money and just how they make their content in general. And so the first thing that we're going to talk about, at least that I hope we get around to talking about, is the protocols in the podcast, like what they do in relation to the genre. And one of the things that I've noticed for the official podcast that they do in relation to the genre is they always like they give their links at the very beginning of the podcast when they're even before they're introduced. They show off what websites they have like accounts for and how you can find these specific people if you want to look them up later on.
I want to spread the word so that you can watch other episodes in case you missed out on the last episode or if you are just now tuning in.
Yeah, like at the end of each video.
They give their links to their Facebook pages, their Twitter, their Instagram.
And while giving their links, that's also how they get spread word of mouth from other people who have seen their things, and then accumulating followers on all of their different social media just makes them easier to find for other people. So linking it in there actually really helps spread everything that they are and move the podcast around, making them more money and making their presence on the internet even wider. Because the more places you are on the internet, obviously the easier you will be to find.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
That's one thing I want to criticize about the official podcast. I feel like they really shill themselves a lot. They really spread their name a lot, almost to a point that it's become a joke. The viewers of the podcast as well as the hosts that you need to follow the official podcast on whatever social media. The sponsorship joke. blueapron.com/official.
Yeah,
Make sure to go to consent.com /official.
Consent.com/official.
Yeah, I agree on that, especially with the whole like Blue Apron thing.
Yes.
Yeah, but yeah, so basically this is their main source of income. So also really showing off what the official podcast is and adding their own links allows for each individual not only to help the official podcast gain more money, but also get their individual channels more viewers, which gives them more money. Because each one of these people does this for a living. This is their livelihood and how they get around. So they make their money off of other YouTube videos, whether that be commentary over the infomercials or just game commentary that lasts a few minutes. But each one of their individual channels links to their other content, which, I mean, really smart idea, but also can come off as sort of like, I don't know, pushy, I guess it would be, to constantly be throwing your name in other people's faces to be like, hey, come like, follow, and subscribe, blah, 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 at every point.
It's kind of an annoyance, or just kind of in the way when you're trying to listen to an actual podcast where people give their opinions and their thoughts, and for the first 5 minutes of the podcast, they're giving out their information, like.
Which is a pretty good critique that you could say. Just like the first few minutes of the podcast, you're almost like you feel like you have time to leave and get things and do whatever you need to do. So you're not really paying attention to the first few minutes just because it is constantly shelling themselves towards people.
So what have you guys been talking about?
What?
So what have you guys been talking about?
That was the official podcast.
I just got back at Scrapfood.
We were talking about blueapron.com, which is a fantastic service I must
So-
say I myself have used Blue Apron, and I have to rate it like 5 out of 10
Please
stars.
like and follow any videos done by the Viking Janitor, and also come follow him on stream. Twitch TV
VikingJanitor.com/markiplier/blueapron.shaveclub.
Slash
Slash
the official
content.
podcast.
Consent.com, the official podcast.
But yeah,
If you'd like to support this podcast, start by giving us a good grade. We do ask that we get a very good high number on this. Am I right, fellas?
Right.
Arnold Johnny College over here.
Oh!
God damn it.
Go take a bath with a
You're gonna have
toaster.
to cut that out.
No,
as
I'm
well
not.
as-
I'm
as
not.
well as well as cut what?
Cut you. What?
Chris. Carrot cake.
Oh no.
But yeah, so that covers like their livelihoods, spreading the name, and sort of how they get their podcast around.
Hmm. And I think we talked about how they adhered to the some of those protocols, but just a little side note about how at the very end of each of their videos, they don't really have an outro like a normal podcast or just YouTube video would. And I find that interesting because usually you would expect to have links to just other videos of theirs, to their channel to like and subscribe, but they don't do that, at least at the end of the video.
Also, fun to note, and most, at least podcasts that I've watched, rather than doing the beginning to show themselves out, the ending is normally when other podcasts would give their links and everything. And that's just supposed to be like, now that we've gotten to the end, people would be more likely to head out and do something like that. And I feel like they're I feel like they're missing out a lot, because if you wait until the very end, that means they weren't not paying attention in the beginning. And whenever you sum it up at the end, they could immediately, finishing the podcast, go and check out your material, rather than at the beginning skipping the podcast to go see other material from the person. I feel like waiting to the end is just a better way, and I think they're missing out by doing it at the beginning.
Well, so I personally, if I were to podcast, I would just, since they don't have any visuals really, you could just put it on your phone, put some headphones in, put the earphone in your pocket, and just listen to it like you would listen to music, right?
Right.
And when you're listening to it and they just say, well, that's the end, bye, turn it off, well, I didn't know it was going to end, or else I would have started up the next episode. If they started to say, well, I'm Andrew and this is my Twitter,
I'm Johnny Knoxville.
yeah. And then I would know, okay, the podcast is ending, I better start up the next episode, right?
Right.
You don't really have time to prepare for that.
So,
ending.
like you said, you could just skip the entire first 5 minutes of the podcast, because it's just spreading the word about all of the hosts. Whereas if you put it at the end, I've already listened this long, I don't mind listening a few seconds in case I need to check out more.
Yeah.
If
Right.
you start at the beginning, I'm not going to be like, well, I'm just starting to listen to these, let's talk about this. Before I listen to them at all, before I hear even one word spoken, I better check out everything else that they have to offer.
Right. And I feel like letting yourself leave an impression first is more important than trying to give an impression by other things you've done.
Exactly.
So I like using the podcast to leave an influence. I feel like is a much stronger idea, but also it could be a huge downside to where you come in and you're watching the middle of the podcast. Let's say it's one of their live podcasts, and they don't do it at the end, and they don't give you their links at the very end. So if you did stick around until the very end, you still wouldn't know how to, if you came in the middle, you wouldn't know how to find them.
Yeah.
And so I feel like leaving it at the end would allow anyone coming in and watching it to find exactly what you need. And and I feel like, I know we've stayed on this for a while now. I just feel like that is a huge down, because structure inside of it, I feel like having at least a good point A to point Z I feel like getting from point A to point Z is the most important part of making any sort of like content, because having that structure and having a very intelligible way of getting from, like, you have your intros, which are not outros, and I feel like giving your own links and stuff feels a lot more like an outro than what they have.
Yeah, especially like you don't go up to someone and like, hey, you should totally tell your friends to like subscribe to my like YouTube channel, or like to just sell my mixtape or some random like thing like that,
Let me
without
give an
them
example
listening
on
to
that.
it at all. You don't give them a sample. It just feels wrong. They don't know what they're in for.
A door-to-door vacuum sales wouldn't knock on your door and tell you, "Hey, please buy my vacuum, but first, check out my carpet shampoo." Like, you don't really care about the carpet shampoo because you don't even know if the vacuum that they're selling. You want to see the vacuum work, and then maybe you'll check out the carpet shampoo, whatever other attachments to the vacuum.
Right.
But like you said, we have stayed on this for a little, and I feel like there is at least one more fatigue.
Right.
And so I think what Jake was saying earlier was it's a good segue into just another minor part, which is how you can just plug in your phone and look up the podcast on like many different social media sites, and also just like what is it, music software like SoundCloud and Spotify. Yeah,
Musical platforms.
SoundCloud, Spotify.
Speaking
iTunes.
of, you can get 12 months free trial of Spotify if you go to spotify.com/official. If you ever want to listen to any of your favorite songs and find any genre of music you would like to listen to, Spotify is the music channel for you, allowing
Like Britney
endless
Spears.
sources of music and all sorts of great listening. So yeah,
I just found
Spotify.
out from my favorite website that is a lie. Go to lie.com/the official podcast,
Oh,
and you'll find out that link is actually a farce, a false, a big old stinking lie.
Well, I have a link that proves that false. It's called liar/the official podcast. You'll find out that liar.com is a lie.
jeez.
That's the point. It's called lie.com.
I'm gonna eat you.
These are some spooky conspiracies going on, but I think that we should talk about not only the multiple different kinds of delivery systems, but also how these delivery systems and just the people in the podcast, how it leads to like a larger globalization of the podcast in general. Like the what's it, like 2-3 of the people in the podcast aren't from America. One of them's in Turkey. One of them's in
Well, okay, so that's really difficult with like the idea of podcasts, because the internet isn't centralized to North America or anywhere. Anything placed on the internet can be seen by anyone. That's why you have the demographics on different media output sources. Like if you have a YouTube channel, any of your YouTube videos, you can look up the demographics and it tells you where your viewer base is, whether it's North America or South America. But there's no like restrictions. Like it's basically the only sort of wall barrier for whenever you put the official podcast up on Twitch and YouTube, I feel like, are its two main proprietors. The only thing that restricts other ones is that their language selection is always English. That's the only forward setting that you get when posting to Twitch or I guess Twitch has different servers you would connect to, which give you better connection. But anybody can join from anywhere, whether it be Mexico or South America, whatever. So talking about centralization, the podcast members aren't from North America, which might basically what I'm trying to get at is what draws other people to that are the social norms of their people. So whatever sort of normalities that they know would make them feel more comfortable coming into this podcast or coming into another podcast or whatever. That's what's going to bring them in, is they feel like the entertainment or the content that's coming out of that central podcast pertains to them, pertains to them. And so I feel like talking about how they get from place to place, or centralization, or nation, or globalization. I just kept saying a whole bunch of different things.
Yeah, you did.
Their globalization comes down to what people find entertaining from those different areas, and also like language barriers. Like someone from Japan who speaks Japanese. Japanese.
Oh Lord.
Who speaks Japanese? They couldn't watch the official podcast without like a translation or something, so it doesn't really work for them.
Well, that's as well as somebody from Australia might watch and be like, "Hey, that one's from Australia. I really like that. I'm gonna tune in."
Right.
He's from Turkey, and I relate to the way that he doesn't like being here. I can watch this.
I also agree. I would not want to be in Turkey.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so it goes both ways. Like, that's how they get and lose their like viewership from other places.
It could only help them to make some sort of translation, though that is fairly difficult work as far as.
I do know
because
that with YouTube though, there's this thing that they added. I forgot how long ago it was. It's like some YouTube Heroes thing, but you can add your own subtitles to a specific like video.
Yeah.
But with a podcast, it's just you have to go through an hour and like I don't know, a half, 2 hours, just sifting through words and typing them out, and I don't think anyone would want to do that. At least I wouldn't. I would not like to do that.
I personally wouldn't either.
No, I'm not a big subtitle guy myself.
Yeah, I know that YouTube tries its best with its auto-generated feature, but that doesn't really help a lot of the time. But
and so basically, the official podcast it's basically a group of 4 friends with a single guest most of the time, getting together and talking about anything. The entire purpose is to raise money to help get their friend.
And so, like, the advertising revenue from the video is strictly for, what is it? It's split in 4 ways in between each and every one of them. But the money for their Patreon that they have for their podcast, it's mainly going to try and help get their friend out of Turkey and to a safer place.
Exactly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But I feel like I forgot what I was going to say.
Tell me what you feel.
Okay, yeah, okay. I have a lot of feelings. And, okay.
I felt attacked.
Again, I feel like because they don't really have a structure to the podcast, really. Like, they don't go in there and they're like, here are these certain topics, and they don't follow, like, any structure throughout every single podcast. The only structure they have is, like, their intro, which is always done by someone else that is always sort of sporadic and thrown out there. And so, anytime you log on, they could talk about anything. Like, anything could ever come up.
Yeah, and
it's so
not, like,
it's not structured or anything. They don't have a certain demographic they're going after. And so I feel like that runs into the problem of every episode they could lose a certain kind of viewer because they don't have a topic that they stick to, and so they don't have a general like group of people, which can be to their benefit or to their downfall, because they'll never have like, I'm sure they'll have concurrent viewers who just think they're funny, but they also have viewers who may have just come in on one that they were talking about something that they enjoyed, and then now they're not, and so they don't want to watch it. And I feel like lacking that structure could keep them away from rapidly concurrent viewers, if that makes sense.
People like to imagine that all podcasts would stick to the same formula, but this just doesn't. And sometimes that's appealing because people enjoy, at least I know that I sometimes enjoy hearing people talk and rambling about different topics and joking around with them. But I can completely understand expecting some specific clearly thought out podcast, and just not getting any structure to a podcast at all, I would be disappointed. And
Yeah, it's sort of like you go to a restaurant and you go to order a sandwich, but every time you order the sandwich, you don't know what's going to come on the sandwich. And so, while some people would really like that who could eat a lot, like let's say Guy Fieri from Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives comes in there.
Whoa!
Yeah, he's going to be like, whoa, this sandwich is amazing! Every time he goes in there, he's going to be like, it's got egg, mustard, and semen all over it. It's delicious.
What?
Don't worry about the last one.
What was that?
So, you're right. Take off the mustard, Jimmy.
Right. But to other people, they're gonna get the sandwich. They're gonna be like, I want to find something that I like that I can come back and eat every time. And that's sort of like the trap that they'd run into coming with this podcast. It's just you don't know what you're gonna get out of each podcast, because every time they do the podcast, they have a different guest who sets a different tone for the fifth member. And I feel like that's a huge thing. Is like a podcast obviously have a lot of guests, but every time you have a guest, that's a different tone to be set, because everybody's different, and you only have those 5 people trying to bounce off of each other. And then with a podcast that already doesn't have centralized ideas to keep them on a set topic or a set path, it makes it a lot more chaotic. And I feel like if they had at least some structure like other podcasts do, it would it would help, and they don't have to have set topics, but I feel like they are losing out on concurrent viewers by being sporadic and whatever. It's just basically you're coming in there to watch 5 people have normal conversations like they would just be at dinner.
yeah, and that is definitely not appealing sometimes.
Right. And again, it's sort of like the sandwich analogy, of which you never know what you're going to get. And so sometimes you like the sandwich, sometimes you have a few flavors in the sandwich that you enjoy, or sometimes you love the sandwich. It's all like a roll of the dice of what they decide to do that day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And so I think on that note, we can clearly say that the official podcast
It's a phony.
no
Go to liar.com/official
Oh
to figure
my
out
God.
that the official podcast is a lie.
Oh my God. We can say that the official podcast, although it's laid back and it feels welcoming, the lack of structure, the way they present themselves with their introductions and their links, and really what the process of going through the making their videos, how unorganized it is, it really can, I guess
It can be distasteful.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that that's pretty good. So
Yeah.
yeah.
All right. Well, bye.
Bye.